Hello, my name is Mary Battaglia. When I was born, my name was Mary Lou Schaefer Elizabeth Battaglia. Elizabeth was my confirmation name. And I had that name for 20 years. And then I met the man of my life and love of my life, Anthony or Tony Battaglia.
Me? Anthony C. or Charles Battaglia. They named me Charles as Charlie was a boxer. But I was born in August 21st, 1935 in Omaha, Nebraska, to my mother and father, Connie Battaglia and Antone. Well, they went by two names, Joseph, Anthony Joseph Battaglia. So they named me Anthony Battaglia the Third. And when I was in school, my name was Anthony Battaglia the Turd. But I'm not really the turd. I'm not the third person with the name Anthony Charles Battaglia. My mother was born in Palermo, Italy. My dad was born in New Jersey. And they both came over. Well, my dad came to Nebraska because his brother, Nate, owned a printing shop. My mother come over and their family first roosted in Grand Island, Nebraska. And a funny story about this, my mother and her sister were acting up in Grand Island. And their mother said, "If you're not careful, the devil is going to get you." Well, so happens that there was a parade in Grand Island. And so what happens was, here's this devil on a horse, scared the heck out of my mother and her sister. They climbed a tree. So they learned their lesson the hard way. My dad first became a printer for my uncle on South 13th Street. And when I was born, my mother and father had the basement of the printing shop. And at 4, maybe 5 years old, I don't know exact, they moved to my dad's father's house because his mother passed away when he was very young. But anyhow, after that, we moved to 10th and Center and had a good street life there. My mother was busy with making drapes, and one day when she was making drapes, she hit the sewing machine and the needles went all over the floor. And she bent down on her knee to pick up the needles, and one needle stuck in her knee way in between whatever the knee is. The only thing hanging was a thread. So she was rushed to the hospital. She wasn't able to walk. So we moved in with my grandparents, Rose Marino and Frank Marino. Rose had 3 daughters and 1 boy. And lo and behold, when we moved into the house, there were 4 families living in this house. We had my sister Rosalie, and then Frank came along, and I should go back a little. He came along, he was born when we were living on 10th and Center, and he had lung problems. And I could remember one time my mother, Rosalie, and Frank were the only ones home, and something happened to Frank's lungs. He couldn't breathe. We couldn't get the rescue squad, so I carried him up to St. Joe Hospital, which was maybe 10 blocks, where we went into an emergency and they took care of him. Living on 17th Street with all those people in the house was not pleasant for me. I couldn't adhere, I couldn't get my brain around all the people talking at one time. When we sat down at the table, to eat supper. When my grandfather was home, everybody had to sit still until my grandfather kind of hit the table. Everybody ate. And when he said smile or talk, everybody talked or smiled. I was going to prep at the time. We lived on 17th Street. And there were times when their bathroom was upstairs. It was a two-story house. And there was a tub right under a window. And when it was time to go to bed, I get in the tub, not to take a tub bath, but I opened the window, snuck out onto the porch that they had. Sometimes I slept out there on the porch. Other times, there were some times that I went to Riverview Park. Riverview today was not what it was back then, believe me. But when I come home, nobody missed me. But anyhow, I got through it. Graduated from prep in 1954. I played sports my freshman year all the way. And in baseball, I was Don Leahy's was the coach. And I was his first captain in baseball. When I was a senior, I made all-city first base. We lived on 10th Street, and I was about 11 years old. I had two cousins that lived a half a block away from me. One was 16, the other was 18. They got mad at their parents. They told them, we're going to run away. And they had relatives out by Boys Town. So on their way to running away, they come up, they seen me, they asked me if I wanted to run away. And I says, sure, that sounds fun. So I ran away with them. Now we're walking from 10th Street to Boys Town. I got hungry, and there was nothing to eat except in the farmer's yards, tomatoes and apples. Well, that's exactly what I ate. We kept going, and all of a sudden, I got diarrhea. And now I'm 10 years old. So I go into this cornfield, I take my pants down and my shorts, and I put my underpants, I found a box in a box. But lo and behold, 4 o'clock at night, here comes the highway patrol. They caught us. And behind them was my dad and my cousin's dad. So we got in the car. Now I had my box with me. So he turned around and started driving to Omaha. And I seen both of them roll their windows down in front. I didn't think much of it. And my dad looked back, he said, what smells? I said, I don't know. He said, somebody did something. So they stopped. My dad said, what do you have in that box? And I said, oh, I didn't want to tell him what it was. So he opened it up, and lo and behold, there were my dirty shorts in the box. And so they threw them out. I got home. My dad beat me something awful for lying, for running away, and lying again because of what I did. So anyhow, I went to Creighton Prep High School. And through the years, I had a lot of fun, but I got in a lot of trouble too. I'm not going to say I was an angel. I'll be very honest, I was not an angel in school. And I got in a lot of trouble. But anyhow, I was a senior in high school. Now, we lived on 31st and Seward Street. Went to the junior-senior prom, and I drank a little bit more than I should have. So guys took me home. I took the girl home. Guys took me home, took me up to the porch, rang the doorbell, and took off. My dad came down, and I thought, I'm thinking this, I'm going to get killed. So he opens the door, sees me, he says, let's go to bed. And I thought, wow, this is neat. So we go upstairs. It was a two-story house again. You go upstairs, this bedroom, mine. I went to bed, got in my pajamas, went to bed. 4 o'clock in the morning, my dad come in the room and said, "Anthony, get up, get up." And I shook my head. I thought, why would I have to get up at 4 o'clock? He said, "Get up, get dressed, and go in the basement and get the bandsaw." What's he talking about? So I got dressed, went downstairs, I got the bandsaw. He says, "Now you see that apple tree in the backyard?" I said, "Uh-huh." Now it's dark out. 4 o'clock in the morning. Probably didn't get a half hour worth of sleep. So he says, "See that apple tree?" I said, "Uh-huh." He says, "I want you to climb up it and I want you to cut that branch. And you don't get out of that tree until I tell you to." 5 o'clock the next day, he came home. I was in the tree dying. He says, "Get out of the tree." He says, I hope you'll never do that again. And to this day, I remember what happened. And I don't drink a lot. But I graduated from prep in 1954. I dated. I didn't have anything in my mind that I was going to get married or this or that, you know. So there was a he and she party. And Judy O'Keefe said to Grandma, "Why don't you ask Anthony or Tony to go on a date?" So she did. And we went on a date, and we went out to Louisville, and everybody was in the cavern. They were all making out and everything, and here was I sitting with Grandma in the car, and I had a convertible. I bought a convertible. I was a freshman at Creighton University. I bought a beautiful, beautiful car, and we were sitting in the car. Never did get wild or did anything. Never. So I'll let Grandma explain the rest of that, because on August 25th was the best day of my life. We got married. We had Mike, Bing, Kathy, Bing, Bing. And we lived in Grandma's folks' house in the basement. And our bed was right under the water pipe. And in the summertime, it would sweat and drip, boop, water, drip, 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 drip. And we would take turns getting up in the middle of the night with a towel and wiping the water pipe.
I remember that night, and it was the only time in my life I had ever had a blind date. All of us girls wanted to go out to, what was it called?
Louisville
Louisville, yeah.
Caverns.
Yeah, and it'd have a swimming party and bring food and all. And so, you know, this guy was one of the most popular guys up at prep. And I said, "Oh my God," and I never liked him when I was a cheerleader. For 4 years, he was playing, and every year they beat South in the baseball he was on and the football that he played on. And I dated and went steady with a guy, Bill Dostal. He was a very nice guy from South High those 4 years, and they played opposite. And I always felt bad because the love of my life I thought was this Bill Dostal. And here he was, so I said, "Judy," I said, "I don't even like him." She says, "You don't even know him." I said, I know. He said, "I know he's a nice person, but he used to always, remember how he used to beat us up on all our games we played?" But I did ask him, and he treated me like he was a gentleman. And that, because I had heard he was one of these guys, loved him and left him, you know, in other words, really dated around and then on again, off again. And so I wasn't prepared for him, but he, so far, 60 almost, well, it is 62 years.
62 years.
And as I keep telling you kids, if this works out, we're going to get married.
When my first date with her, I worked outside, and I was always topless. And I was so dark, I was probably dark as the table. Anyhow, I had this date, and I was running late. So took a shower and I was shaving and I cut my face, I don't know, a million times with the razor blade. And so in those days, they didn't have these sector pencils and we used toilet paper. And I put toilet paper all over my face on the blood. So I go over her house, knock on the door. And I said, I'm Tony Battaglia, I have a date with your daughter Mary. And her dad said, come on in the house, will ya? So I went in the house, I thought, oh geez, what? So we go in the bathroom and he takes all the paper off my face, washed my face and everything with cold water, and I was good. Everything was okay. That's one of the first dates, blind days I ever had with my grandma.
Mhm.
And then the kids came.
We got married in 1956.
Six.
And we had met the spring of 54 and dated, and we got engaged, and we were engaged 1 full year.
Yeah.
And we were married exactly 10 months, and we had Michael Anthony Battaglia
Mm-hmm.
and Kathleen Ann Battaglia. And we had, when we were going together and going to get married, we had bought a book. And we had looked up the names we wanted, and we both wanted those 2 names. First one for the boy or girl, and we used those names. And then we lost a baby after that, about a year later, and it was only not even near growing, about, I was in my 4th month. And that little baby is right now, I say, up in heaven, and I pray to him or her, whatever, that they will pray for and watch over all of us here on earth. So you don't hesitate to ever pray for that little baby, because that is another little cousin you have that we never got to know. So, and then I was a sterile for 3 years, well, for 6 years from the time Kathy was born. It's kind of difficult when I try to talk about this, but I was in the hospital twice for different procedures, and so on. And we wanted another baby so bad. And in 1964, after praying, because we didn't know if we'd ever have more children, we got pregnant, and along came Sharon Marie Battaglia. And she was our little darling, and Kathy and Mike were older, and they just taught her everything. And so if she had bad habits, it would have been her fault, wasn't it? And then 2 years later, little Margaret Mary Battaglia was born. So they were little buddies from the beginning. And their older brother and sister were so proud of him and loved him. And so then we went along our merry way for 3 more years. And one day I told your grandpa, I said, I've got a doctor appointment. He says, are you sick? I said, no, I just have to have a checkup. So he was out when I came home. He was up on the roof, on the 2-story on top of it, on a ladder. And as I get out of the car, he said, what did the doctor say? And I said, he said we're going to have another baby. And he almost fell off the roof. That baby was Mark, exactly, yeah. Yeah, so we had the 5 children and had lots of fun with them. And we did spend a lot of time going out to that. In fact, we went out when little Margaret was she was not born yet. And I did go out that particular day and took Sherry, and she was 2 years old. And then I was pregnant, but it was fine. I just had such a good time out there with him. I said, I think I want to spend the night with you guys. And they said, you do? Okay, they were happy. And so then Margaret Mary was probably the first time after she was born, she was less than a month old. and we went out with our friends Schneider ones, and they had a little baby boy almost as small. And here this little teeny tiny baby, and so she was a little camper, and they were all little campers until the day when we got a trailer, self-contained trailer. Yeah. Oh, and it's fun story about something that Margaret Mary said. She was about 2, and she loved this little trailer. And it had a little bathroom, you know, because they're only 19 feet long, but they're self-contained and have water and gas and everything. And they're a nice roof over your head. So she loved to go to this little tiny bathroom. And then there was the sink, and then there was just a shower head above your head, and a stool. So I hollered into her. We were cooking out on the grill, and we were in a busy area where there were a lot of campers around us. And I said, Margaret Mary, come and eat. And she says, okay. And we had said to the kids, don't flush every time you go. If you just go tinkle, that was number 1. If you just go tinkle, you don't have to. Just use a little bit of paper, because if you only have so much in a holding tank, you're not hooked up to plumbing, okay? So she said, Mom, she says, can I flush the toilet? And she was screaming out as loud as her little voice could. Of course, so everybody in the campground's hearing it, and I went to the door, and I said, what did you do, number 1 or number 2? She goes, I did the number 3s. I said, what's the number 3s? She goes, that's the diarrheas.
Everybody
and the whole campground just roared.
Our friends used to call Margaret meatball eyes. But anyhow, this once on Mike, we were living in Westwood Lane in 2-story. He was sleeping in the basement. When he was working, he'd come upstairs, take a shower, and go back down and take a little nap because he was tired. So all of a sudden, we heard screaming out loud like somebody got killed. So I ran down the basement real fast, and Mike's laying on the bed in a fetal position. I said, what's the matter? And he's crying. I said, Mike, what's the matter? Tell me. He says, I'm caught in my zipper. I said, what do you mean you're caught in your zipper? He says, I don't have any underpants on, and I zip my pants up, and I'm caught. I said, we're going to cut it off. He said, oh, my God, Dad. So I said, we got to go to the hospital.
He thought his dad meant we got to cut off his Peter.
So we go to the hospital, and we tell the nun, sign in, and the nun says, well, what happened? And we didn't say anything. And she says, well, what happened to your son?
I worked with her.
Well, sister, he caught his Peter in his zipper. She says, oh my gosh, that's terrible. So what do? They call the orderly, Doc Peter, come in. Doc Peter, come in.
That's his name.
That was the name of the guy.
Yeah.
So he come in, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is gonna die. So what they did is put Vaseline on the zipper, zipped it down, and he was free. But he was really, really in pain.
Yeah.
Then I have to tell you a little story.
Then I want to tell one on you.
About Sherry.
No, Sherry.
2 of them. Sherry, to this day, does not wear shoes. Do you guys know that? We're in North Dakota, and we're on a huge dinosaur, wooden dinosaur. And she's up at the top crying. Why are you crying? I don't have any shoes. Come on down. So he went in and bought shoes. Come out, played again. What's the matter, Sherry? Dad, I lost my shoes. It was the second time. So he got her shoes. Now she wears shoes now. Then Kathy, we went camping out at Memphis Lakes. Mm-hmm. And we were ready to come home. And Kathy climbed a tree, wasn't a big tree, and she fell out and broke her arm. She couldn't move her arm, it was like this. So we got her in the back of that, we had a station wagon, and I put the back seat down and laid her down, and Grandma was in the back seat with her. So we stopped in Syracuse, Nebraska, the hospital. They said, no, we don't have anybody that could do that kind of work. So he says, we're gonna call St. Joe Hospital in Omaha and get Dr. Tribulato. So we got down there, got Tribulato, and they fixed her arm, but she had to keep it in a position across her belly. And we felt sorry for her because the muscles in her arm became this way. It came across her belly because it was in a cast for so long, and we had to pull her arm till she cried and cried and cried. Finally, we got her straightened out, and to this day, I think she has a little bit of problem with her arm. Mark was a little homebody. He'd go sleeping at the neighbor's house about 2 houses up, and he'd come home about midnight and crying, saying, I'm lonesome, I want my mom and dad. So anyhow, he came in and went to bed. But when he was in high school, he got in a lot of trouble. But this one day, I come home from work, probably about maybe like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I heard this noise upstairs, and we lived in Westwood Lane. I thought, somebody's in our house. So I kind of snuck up the stairs, and I heard this shuffling around, and I thought, what the heck? I went in Margaret's room, opened the closet, and guess who's standing in the closet hiding from me? Mark. During school. He was supposed to be in school. But anyhow, Mark turned out to be a real good man, good individual. He married a girl from Creston, Iowa, who had 2 children, and we count them as our grandchildren too. But he is very happy. He learned he's successful in his job.
What's something that you just want to tell your children, all of them?
Want to tell them this, regardless of what happens through your life, love your mother, love your mother, and don't never be afraid to go to her and ask her questions. Your dad, he could be in the other room, but go to your mother. I never had that opportunity to do that, to go to my mother. In fact, the first time I ever heard her say, I love you, was, she called me up and she said, come up and get the opera tickets. And I said, Mom, the opera's not for 3 months. She says, come up. So I went up to Parsons' house, and got her the tickets, and I sat down on the bed, and her face was so beautiful, clear, beautiful. And I'm looking, and while I'm talking to her, she never said, what? Because every time you talk to her, she would say, what? She never said that, never. So after visiting about a half hour, I said, Mom, I've got to go. So I kissed her goodbye, and she says, I love you. And I walked out the door, and I thought, oh my God, what's happening, So I come home, get a telephone call. He said, your mother wants these aspirins. So I did, yep, I did. I said, okay. 10 minutes later, she called, and she said, I think you ought to come up here. Your mother passed away. Miracle.
Always told all the kids, whether good or bad, always go first to mother and dad. And it still holds true in life, doesn't it, girls?
Oh, yeah.
Whether good or bad,
For
always
sure.
go first to mother and dad. At this time, we have wonderful memories of our in-law children. Kathy was married to Ken for, I believe, 32 years, and they had 5 wonderful children together, and we all loved him. And Andy is married to Margaret, and they have a wonderful 3 children together, or 2 together, and of course they love Maddie as he loves Maddie as she was his daughter, and they're a wonderful family, and they'll do anything you would ever ask them to do. And then Mark, who has his dear wife, Michelle, who I can see has made his days so happy. And we are so thankful to God to have them all 3. Love you, kids. Love you all. Story about my hubby. I was playing on a bowling team with my girlfriends, and it was cold winter. And our little house we lived in, when I cleaned house, it meant you moved all the furniture from here to there. You never kept it and just cleaned around it. So everything got clean that way. So I had that day cleaned, and I went out and came home, and we had a house where you walked in, you were right in the living room, and there was no little foyer or anything. So I kicked off my snow boots, and I took my bowling ball
In a bag.
and the bag and lofted it onto what I thought was an empty spot on the floor. But I had changed the furniture that day, and instead it had the couch there, and Grandpa's laying on the couch sleeping like this, and when I lofted the ball, it got the family jewels.
Oh my God,
And
kids.
he, you know, Tarzan, that Tarzan thing, that's what he screamed so loud. And I was in shock, then I go, oh my God, that's not the floor, that's Tony I hit with the bowling ball.
If I could have got up off of the couch, you would not have a grandma. But I couldn't even move.
He was paralyzed. But, in my behalf, we had those 3 last children after that. Now just think of that. Maybe that just got things moving.
So later on in life, our children got married, had children of their own, and we have such beautiful grandchildren. Mike never got married. Kathy has 5 grandchildren. Sherry has 2. Margaret has 3. Mark has 2 stepchildren. And I think, not to brag or anything, but I think when I talk to my friends on Wednesdays when we have lunch about my grandchildren, they don't believe it. I mean, I just talk about you guys. I just talk about you. We have the youngest of the grandchildren right here, Josie Vosek. And we have probably almost the top, Madeline Coble.
Middle.
The middle.
Middle, yeah.
Pretty middle.
But we love them, and we love to be around them because they make us feel a lot younger, maybe. But when it's all over with, we get tired, naturally, 80 years old. But we have the most beautiful, great grandchildren. One graduated from high school already, cannot believe that. And we have one going to kindergarten school. We have one that, well, we don't know where she's going to go yet, it's a little Jada. And then we have Peanuts in school, and then we have Talia in school. So we have a very beautiful, loving family. Everybody is close. What I like is the closeness of our family. Thank you.
Yeah.
When one of you broke your ankle or whatever, needs some little surgical procedure, we call and tell all the others, they're either there if they can come, or they're praying, and they're calling how's so-and-so doing and all. You know, I mean, they're you kids.
Josie Spring.
It's your character. I mean,
Yeah.
it just doesn't happen. And I think the getting together, when we get together, I sometimes I hear that chatter, and I go, oh my God, this is the most beautiful music to any grandparents' ears to hear, and that you all are aware of each other and love each other. Yeah.
Josie sprained her ankle in school through dance, and her mother called me up and said, would you take Josie to the doctor at Boys Town? She has an appointment for x-ray. I said, sure, I'll be more than happy to. So I picked Josie up and we drive out to Boys Town, and I park in the handicap, and I put the sign up on the window, and by the time I put the sign in the window, I don't see Josie. All of a sudden she opens the door for me, and I get out, and we're walking in, and the nurse said, who's hurt?
Yeah,
Josie's
who's
helping
the
me in.
patient?
She's the one that's hurt.
Hobbling, and she's helping her grandpa get out of the car.
Our first child is Michael. Second is Kathy, who has Aunt Jennifer, Christina, Angelina, Anthony, and Jonathan. Christina has 3 children. Her first great-grandchild was Cedric. Second great-grandchild was Thalia, and third was Clyde. So now we go to Sherry's family.
Oh, we forgot about Angelina.
Oh, Angelina. I'm sorry. Angelina has 1 child,
Lorraine.
Larea, who is in kindergarten. I'm sorry I screwed this up.
Still
Now
loves you.
we'll go to Sherry. Sherry has 2 children, Zach Layton and Ellie Layton. Neither one have children, thank goodness. Third one is Margaret Vasek, who has Maddie Coble,
Francine.
I know, Francine and Josie. Maddie graduated from college. Francine is in college in South Dakota. And Josie,
She's a
is
cheerleader.
cheerleader at Millard North. Our last child that has children is Mark, and he has 2. Nicole. But this is over with.
It's only begun.
What's something that you would like to tell all of your grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Like I said earlier in this interview, honor your mother. Honor your mother. Be loving to her.
And I'd also
Anything
like
else
to
in
say,
life?
they're so hardworking,
What,
and that all of our grandchildren seem to be on a wonderful path. Education is high up there at this time, and they're wonderful men and women.
whatever
From
your
the oldest to the youngest, and we love you all
Whatever
so
your goal.
much.
whatever your goal, go after it. Don't give up on it. We love you all so much. So now we're going to talk about Branson, Missouri. The last 3 years, we've gone to family have gone to Branson, Missouri in a home that we rented. When I tell people that how many of us are in this cabin that go down there, they cannot believe it. They say, is there any fights? Anybody get in a fight? I said, no, everybody loves one another. I got the greatest family that you could ever imagine.
Yes, so the kids do everything they wish down there, and we're just one big happy family. when I come home from that trip and Tony comes home, we're depressed because we're so used to everybody coming at the table, and before the day's over, everybody's around and it's so much fun. But actually,
So,
But-
all in all,
we
your
have a
family.
wonderful life with a wonderful family, and we will work on these names because we actually do know all of our children by name, middle name, and everything else. But I think we've just used too much brain power tonight, and now we're kind of cutting back.
And we are so lucky and so fortunate to have a wonderful, wonderful family.
Amen.
Amen.
we love you.
Love you.
Love you, love you, love you. When Grandpa gets going, were you drinking, honey, or
When?
something? When?
This is the
While you
tamales.
were- I
It was
was
hot tamales.
That's hot
Oh my
tamales.
gosh, you guys, that was good though.
That was,
really
yeah,
good.
yeah.
with life before morning, but. Honey, and I can't see, but I could read you going like this and that. I'm going, whoa.
Oh my god.
Okay, how
Okay.
far did I get?
We
Down
get to
to-
share.
You can just say it out loud, so you both are just naming everybody. Okay.
Oh my God.
Christina, Angelina, and Jonathan. Stop that.
We do so good about 50 years ago, but we don't know what the hell our kids' grandkids' names are.
You want us to write everybody's name down? You
Christina.
want us to write
I
it
can't read.
Did I say them all?
down? No, wait, you did.
Jennifer. She had
And don't tell
Jennifer.
me somebody else is going to have
I'm
a baby.
gonna Jennifer.